Tearlament making Master Duel a tier 0 meta? Well, we are in Diamond 4, currently on a 7-win streak, and we've been using Floowandereeze. Some of you have been asking me about an updated deck list, and that's what we're going to get into now. Before we get into it, I just want to mention, make sure you check the description for timestamps so you can skip ahead to the section of the video that you want if you don't want to watch the whole thing. To start off though, I'm going to go over what is a Shizu tier. I'm just going to spend a couple seconds here, so bear with me. I will be building this deck and playing it, so if you want a further analysis from my perspective, let me know in the comments below. But this is the tier 0 deck. This is what you can expect to run into 75% or more of the time. Of course, there's different variations of this. You can see versions with King of the Swamps that are very powerful, but this is the version that I'll probably build first. And basically what it is you have the Tearlament names when they go to the graveyard via a card effect. So it can be from the deck, from the field, from the hand, etc. You're going to fusion summon with anything else on the field and hand and graveyard in order to bring out very powerful fusion monsters. When these hit the field, they're not static, right? They are very dynamic. It's very easy for this deck to get them off the field, put them back into the extra deck, and bring them back out again. So you can't like Dark Ruler and expect that that's it and you can play through their board, and that's what makes them so hard to beat, because not only do they just instantly mill like 5 cards with Kelbeck and a Yugioh, and then they're able to play from whatever cards they mill into the graveyard, right? Just imagine that. It's essentially a draw 5, right? Like they mill 5 cards. If all 5 cards are activatable in the graveyard, they're 5 free resources from the opponent. And they didn't even lose anything from their hand to do that. This is why the deck is so powerful, right? And like I said, it has a lot of utility options in the extra deck that they can bring out to really control the matchup. And it's very hard for you to play through that. So, what was the meta like before? Well, if you look at what our Floowandereeze deck was prior to Tearlaments hitting Master Duel, it was a lot of Sprite, Branded, things along those lines that were considered very top tier, and they were. And it was a very nice and diverse meta. I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure a lot of other people did as well. Things like Dark Ruler No More had a lot of utility because the game state wasn't as dynamic as it is with Tearlament in the metagame. And when Sprite sets up their board, the Sprite Elf Quick Effect, the IP Masquerena, the Carrot, the Red, etc., they're all activatable, well, at least the Elf and the Masquerena in the main phase. So if the first thing you do in main phase 1 is Dark Ruler No More, they can't extend with IP and Elf. So you've shut down their board, you're able to play through it. It gives you a little bit more consistency in saying, I know what I have to play through now, and I don't have to worry about the opponent interrupting a bunch of different plays. I can just try to extend through their plays. And again, if you watch my videos, which I'll link in the description, of what Floowandereeze was like during that time, I can definitely, or you can definitely see how that plays out during that era of the meta, which is just a couple days ago at this point, right? But yeah, with Sprite, it was easy to kind of try to push through their board. Same with Branded. Branded would usually set up a play during their turn, and you would come to understand or expect, okay, they're gonna do the Mirror Jade, banish a monster by sending Albion to the graveyard. Albion in end phase, bring Branded in red, and that's how they're going to extend their plays. Branded in red's likely going to bring back like an Ad Libitum or a Tragedy, fuse off with like the Mirror Jade, and go into Guardian Chimera, trigger the Ad Libitum, bring back Mirror Jade, that's another free banish. So you kind of knew what to expect to a certain degree, right? The meta was very defined, and it allowed you to really try to play around what you know was the common plays or what was very powerful plays that the opponent would go for. So Dark Ruler was very strong in that regard because, again, it would shut down a lot of what was on the board, which is what you usually had to play through. You could play some like Floodgates, like Fossil Dyna. That was very good. You had 2 copies of Map, which is a consistency card for the deck. Believe it or not, yes it is, because it helps you get your engine rolling and helps unbrick your hand if you have anything other than Robina in it. And just in general, Floowandereeze was very good at locking things down. Going first, Floowandereeze was pretty much, you know, set in its ways. Like, going first is very easy for you to set up both Map and Unexplored Winds as your spells, and then search for trap cards. So you would have all 3 of your power spells and traps in rotation, as well as an M-Pin, and then you would have very powerful follow-up for the opponent's turn. The deck was also pretty consistent. You played Advance, you played Pots, and you played a lot of copies of the Birds with 2 maps, like I said, to help unbrick your hands. And again, if you watch my videos, you see many times where we do that. Now, going over to what the deck is after Tearlament, it's very different. Instead of playing Fossil Dyna and a Floodgate, you have to play Dimension Shifter. Why? Because Fossil Dyna has no utility going second. The opponent's already set up a huge board. Fossil Dyna, you know, yes, will maybe stop them from playing during your turn, but they're likely going to out the Fossil Dyna anyways, and then just extend through regardless. Shifter is a lingering effect. You activate Shifter, that legitimately shuts off everything. And Shifter can also be used going second. So if you're going second, you have Shifter, you activate Shifter in response to something that they do, which is how you want to use Shifter. Again, I'll link a video in the description of how I use Shifter against tier decks. But this will essentially shut down the entire tier player's turn, because anything that's sent to the graveyard is going to get banished. They literally have no play through that. Nothing they can really do. So Shifter is a must. Dimensional Fissure is pretty much a must. Again, this hurts your consistency. With tier playing so dynamically by moving their board around, taking monsters off their field, Dark Ruler has almost no utility. Because when you Dark Ruler, they're just like, okay, I'll put the card back and then bring it back out again. It's not affected by Dark Ruler. Dimensional Fissure banishes those cards that instead. So if they try to recycle, send it to the graveyard, bring it back to the extra deck, it's going to get banished instead. And then whatever they do to extend during your turn is going to get banished, which is going to basically shut them off from all of their plays during your turn. So Dimensional Fissure is very powerful in that regard. It's really powerful going first. It's very limited going second. If you can resolve this card going second though, it will at least give you a chance to play through the opponent's board. Because at that point, now it's kind of fair game. I can't believe I have to say that. But like I mentioned when I was going over the tier deck, as soon as the Tearlament player resolves a card that mills cards into their graveyard, they're now getting free resources into their graveyard, right? So they have what they have in their hand, they have what they have on the field, now they have stuff in the graveyard they're playing with as well. That's like a +3, right? If they're able to get a Kelbeck in the graveyard, mill 5, that's plus 5 cards that they can potentially play off of from the graveyard. The Dimensional Fissure shuts that off. So again, if you play that during your turn and it resolves and it's on the field, you usually don't have to worry about any more interruptions coming out of the graveyard. You have to worry about what's on the field still, but now it's like an even playing field. So that being said, Dimensional Fissure is very good for that. I've opted to also switch out Call by the Graves for Book of Moons. Again, why would you do that? Call by the Grave is such a powerful card. Negate Ash Blossom, negate the Tearlament fusions, and shut them down for another whole turn after that too. Like, why would you ever take out Call by the Grave? Well, the reason is simple. Because the Tearlament deck, when they mill, they have a very high chance of milling one of 5 Grave Shufflers in the Mudora and the Keldo. What does this do? Well, if you attempt to Call by the Grave something, and in my list I'm playing Call by the Grave and I'm going to actually take it out because you don't actually play Call by the Grave in Tearlament. But if you attempt to, like let's say Call by the Grave Havness or Merly or Sharon, they just chain a Shuffler and put it back into the deck. Yes, you stop the fusion, but you don't actually banish the card, and you're actually going -1. Like we just talked about, you need all the advantage you can get because Tearlament generates so much advantage during your turn and their turn that you can't afford to go -1. So just don't even play this. Play something else that's going to out the fusion summons instead. So no Call by the Grave. Instead, we've opted for Book of Moon, and the reasoning is because Book of Moon is a very powerful card in Floowandereeze. It can be used both offensively and defensively. How do you use it defensively? Well, Imperm is still being played. Some Tearlament lists are playing Imperms, and obviously a lot of Rogue decks, which it's hard to say. It's weird to say that other decks other than Tier are now Rogue, but we'll just categorize it as that for now. If you get Impermed or Veilered, I mean Veiler's not really popular, but if you do happen to run into a Veiler, Book of Moon flips your Floowandereeze card face down. It dodges Imperm and Veiler. Pretty strong, right? It allows your bird to resolve and allows you to continue to extend. Offensively, let's say the Tearlament board goes first. They have 1 Tearlament monster on field. You know they have like a Soliac or a Crime face down. If you activate Book of Moon, if they don't Crime it to Omni negate the spell card and they let it resolve, if you're able to flip down their only tier name, it turns off Soliac and Crime because they have to control a tier name in order to resolve the negates of these effects. So it can be used both offensively and defensively in that regard, and that's why I'm opting to play 2. I did test this in Duelist Cup, and Book of Moon overperformed for me for sure, but again, that was before Tearlament was around. So it's a useful card. You won't regret playing it. Yes, it can be a little bricky because you do need other cards to use with it in order to make it effective, but when you do have those cards together, it can be very strong. Map being limited to 1 also hurts this deck quite a lot. You'll often find yourself searching this out with either Empin or an Advent now at this point, if you can't hard draw it, and you literally are playing 1 Terraforming to search for 1 map. There was a game that I saw somebody had Terraforming and map in their opening hand, and I was just like, yeah, that really sucks. That's pretty much lose, like, because you're -1 resource at that point, right? The Terraforming is a completely dead card in your hand. You do still play the pots, so you do have some consistency cards. If these can resolve and you can dig deep into your deck, it can help you, and you are still playing evenly matched, because if the opponent doesn't end on Crime, and if you go second, evenly matched is like really strong, like really, really strong. So that is something to consider as well. I would definitely keep evenly matched in the deck. Now the final thing I'll say is we are also opting to play DD Crows. This card, and I will link in the description again my matches. I did come into a match where DD had 2 DD Crows, and both of them came in super clutch to win me the match. This card, again, is a little bricky to a certain degree, but also it can help unbrick your hands. And again, I'll have a match showcasing how that actually works as well. But in and of itself, it's not useful. You have to use it as a hand trap that's going to really shut down a critical play of the opponent. You do not want to shotgun DD Crows. You don't just want to be like, first fusion, let me just shotgun the DD Crow. Sometimes that's what the right play is, but other times you need to wait to use it at the right time to make it the most effective. So having this card, making the opponent commit to plays and then shutting down a critical juncture of their combo is how you usually want to use DD Crow, or preventing a combo from getting started in the first place is also a way to stop DD Crow. Like think for example against Branded, Mirror Jade will send an Albion, and you might want to just DD Crow that Albion before the end phase so that the Albion can't resolve in the graveyard, and that shuts down the whole Mirror Jade bringing like Branded Expulsion or a Branded in red to their field for follow-up next turn, and they've wasted their Mirror Jade interruption as well. So you've really helped to shut down their extension plays. That's where DD Crow can be very useful. Again, I'll have some actual live gameplay in a different video that I'll link in the description where you can see how this plays out. So overall, this is what the Floowandereeze deck is now. And what do you think of it? What do I think of it? Well, it's definitely less powerful than it was before, and it does take some consistency hits. Now, DD Crow, like I mentioned, can actually improve consistency because it is a winged beast. So it means that you can send it off of Advent to get like a map or a bird to your hand to help unbrick your hand. So it does have some benefits. It's not a complete, like, I have to play this to negate the opponent or interrupt the opponent, and other than that, it's kind of dead. No. And DD Crow is also nice because it can also interrupt other decks other than Tier. So where you can get that, you will. Because not playing Called By absolutely hurts you in other matchups, right? Where, other decks are playing things like Ash Blossom and other cards that Called By the Grave is very strong against. Tearlaments doesn't play Ash, so that's another benefit for you, right? Or another reason why you won't need to play Called By. Most of them don't. Some of them will, but most of them, for the most part, won't. They do play Maxi, though, and that's a benefit for you. So keep those things in mind. The deck, though, is definitely less consistent than it was before, just because the meta is so much different. The version with the Dark Ruler No More was so good, in my opinion. I really loved this deck. This was honestly, in my opinion, like a top tier deck in the meta. And again, don't take my word for it. Look at our match history. We were going on win streaks, having like 90% win rates with this deck, going up against meta decks before Tearlaments dropped. Now, since Tearlaments dropped, it's just the nature of the beast. Tearlaments will naturally win a lot of matches, but if you can even scratch up like a 50-50 win rate against it, I would consider that a success. Going first, if you don't brick, hopefully you'll be able to set up a strong enough board with Fissure and or Dimension Shifter that you can stop the opponent from even playing with Tearlaments and just win the game on the next turn. But if you go first and you brick, obviously you're likely going to lose. It's not like before where you had a chance to really play out a little bit and unbrick, because Tearlaments is so explosive and so consistent, they're going to blow you out of the water if you can't stop them. Going second, it is a very much a real struggle. You basically have to pray you open Shifter, which is limited to 2, unfortunately, or that the opponent doesn't end on a very strong end board, and that you have some extension plays with like Fissure or Evenly Matched to follow up with. So this is what the game is right now. Tearlaments will definitely not be around for a long time. Look what happened in TCG and in OCG. They nerfed this deck to oblivion. It will definitely happen in Master Duel, so it does feel bad to know that people, and myself included, will be investing resources to build this deck just for them to hit the commons, and then you're stuck with 3 ultra rare Rhino Hearts that you can't get your points back for. But 100% that's what they're going to do, because they don't want to refund you ultra rare points, right? So keep that in mind. Some people may not want to build tier because of that, but honestly, if you're going to be playing this game over the next month, you're going to want to play tier. And you can see I have the deck built. I'm going to eventually craft these cards and try to play the deck myself. But I still love Floowandereeze. I think it's a solid deck, but it definitely takes some consistency hits. So with all that in mind, I don't think there's too much else to talk about in terms of the deck. So yeah, make sure you check the description for the matches, and yeah, best of luck if you are using this deck. And if you want to see us continue to use this deck and maybe also use tier, you can subscribe and check out our videos on the channel as well. So again, thank you for watching. Quantum is out.